Everybody, welcome to the Earliest Alert. Brian Good here. Of course, a lot of it's going to be tropical discussion, so a lot of things that I want to cover here on that. We'll get to it. First off, here's a look at satellite image, the visible satellite from Goal 16. Isn't that cool? Look at the Valley Fog there in eastern Kentucky. It's kind of wicked, isn't it? All right, fairly quiet today. We are still in the anticyclonic flow here of dealing with the cyclonic flow. I'll get it right. The clouds wrapping around this area. The thing is, there's not as much moisture around today. We will have the cloud field that will develop, but any shower risk looks to be aiming more toward this area and north today. So we're going to keep the rain chance below 10%, which means it's not even going to show up on the app, but that's the reason why. All right, so let's show you Futurecast. How we look good here for the rest of the day today as we'll climb back into the lower 70s. Very similar to what we had yesterday. Now, as we head into tonight, as the clouds fade out, we're actually going to get more of a south wind, so we may not get as cool tonight as we were this morning. The model's got us at like 49. I think we'll be a little bit warmer than that, but we have another front coming in tomorrow. But this one's angled this way. Typical, what you would call, I guess, the backdoor type of cold fronts that move in from the northeast. So as it moves in, I think we'll have enough heating to get us about 80 degrees, but there's growing signs of rain trying to pop along it. I went ahead and put in at least a 10% chance for a brief shower along the front, and that may not even be into wave country. It may be, say, Jennings County to Carroll, but just as a heads up, there could be a bit of moisture. There's not a lot to work with. That's why I was really hesitant on it. But either way, once the front moves in, it will drop us down just back into the 70s for this weekend as we stay dry. So let's move ahead. We have a busy setup when it comes to the tropics. We have our three systems. It zoomed on by pretty quick there. I apologize, but we have Katia, Hurricane Katia, which is going to stay back into the southwest Gulf of Mexico. It's not going to be tracking toward the United States. No sign of that anyway yet. Let's keep it that way. We got Jose, which we'll cover in a minute. It's to the east of Irma, but Irma is the main one. Latest advisory, the full advisory comes out at 11 o'clock this morning on the track part. Notice it's now north of the Dominican Republic. It's been going through several different eye wall cycles. It's heading right toward the Bahamas, though, for tonight. The spaghetti plots, the different model ideas, still aiming toward the idea of it making that sharp turn. The high to the north is showing a weak side on the southwest corner of it. And, of course, got Katia over here. So because the weakening of that high to the northwest of Irma, that looks to be its opening it's been looking for, and it's going to trend in that direction. Now, notice they've been back again to the left, and the reason for that is the high, another high, the one that's moving in for our area, builds back in, and it's going to press down on Irma. So likely it will slow Irma down or make it go back west, which would be a factor for us in our forecast. And that's something we got to figure out, which we will get into that in here in a second. So there's the spaghetti plot. Really, it looks like it's going to be an issue of Miami. Which side here of Florida are we talking about? Because the overall path that the models have been taking on this is to keep it through the Bahamas, and then is it going to go west, the eye itself west of Miami, or to the east? Makes a big difference in the winds, as I'll show you in a second. If it were to go overland, Florida's flat, as y'all know, but there's still friction, so it would cause somewhat of a weakening. It's got it down to Cat 1 as it approaches the South Carolina coast. Of course, if it stays over the open water, I don't know if it would even go to that level. It may stay up there as Cat 2 or 3. Close to major category status. But you can see still the cone of uncertainty can still have it curve out a bit more before going back to the west. I still think that back to the west idea is possible, but it's this curve to the north that I'm seeing signs that the models are struggling with. Does it go straight into South Carolina? Does it kind of curve, then move into North Carolina, and then go backwards? Kind of weird turning issues going on. I'm showing up here because it's detecting that high, trying to build back in at the last minute. And that's going to cause some problems for the models. So the model's been a problem since the beginning, right? Water temperature is certainly warm enough for more fuel. You see these deeper reds. It's moving right into that. So it's going to blow up there. Here's your Gulf Stream. It will feed on that if it goes east of Florida, and we don't want it. See that little hint of pink? That's 90-degree water west of Florida. And so far, the trend is not to take it west of Florida. Let's hope that's the case, because if it were to, not only would Florida be on the east side of a hurricane, which you do not want to be on, but it would really power up to a very, very powerful hurricane, even more stronger than its 180 mile per hour sustained winds it has now at the Cat 5 level. It could get the 190 to 200 kind of deal, that kind of energy to work with. So we don't want that. But still, this is plenty enough to keep it going as a major hurricane, even east of Florida. Now, let me show you the wind fields, because this is why I say that it's important to keep an eye on the entire side of the system. Tropical storm force winds, as we head into tomorrow, are going to extend all the way through all of Cuba. Hurricane force winds are going to just, if the Euro's right anyway, are going to just brush the coast of Cuba. But notice where the strongest winds are, the northern and northeast side here. That's where your Cat 4 winds are, very close to the eye, not as intense, showing up on the southern side of that. Then as we head into the Bahamas, approaching Miami, you start to see hints of that Cat 5 wind potential again on the east-northeast quadrant. So whether it goes west or east of Miami is important because of that. You don't want that going right into the city. This isn't any better, don't get me wrong, but if you had to choose, you want to be on the west side. But this is going to really slam the Bahamas too. Then it keeps going. Notice again as we head into this weekend, the strongest of winds on the east side offshore, but still fairly healthy. I mean, look at the expansion of the Category 1 winds, 75 miles per hour on up, all the way to Tampa. I mean, this is going to do wind damage all the way through central Florida, and that goes all through the state into southeast Georgia. So that's the reason why the entire state is likely to face wind damage and flooding. Even though the eye may only brush briefly into Florida or stay offshore, this hurricane's so large it is going to do damage for everyone. So everyone's like, hey, they evacuated for no reason. No, they didn't. It's a good idea. Because it's going to be a significant event for Florida, it looks like. The Carolinas, this is the tough part, how it's going to evolve and then drift in our area, because it'll still be pretty windy for us when it moves in. Storm surge issues here, because the wave height potential is going to be significant. As we move into this weekend, we're talking about that northeast quadrant throwing in 35-foot waves and some of these barrier islands moving in from the southeast to northwest. That is a tremendous amount of storm surge there that could impact southeast Florida. But here's the thing. The Charleston Shelf area, the ocean shelf of this part of the Atlantic is relatively shallow. If you've ever been to Charleston and Savannah, you can walk out in some cases pretty far and then get on sandbars. So the water is going to build up dramatically with that intensity off of Miami. It's then going to push all those high waves into a bowl area of the Atlantic, a shallow water area of the Carolina coast. That's why you see the expansion of 35-foot waves here. So the hurricane itself could still weaken, but the damage has been done. The forward motion of building up those waves has already begun. So then you got a big problem because all these little inlets here in Savannah, not far from Tybee, all the way into the Charleston Harbor, Myrtle's Inlet, and Myrtle Beach, you're talking about potential here for 30 to 35-foot waves to be pushed into these harbors, depending on where that track is on the angle. And with such a shallow shelf there, the storm surge, to me, the way this is looking, the storm surge issue, if this track holds going more like this, is going to be likely a more significant issue than the wind damage it could be in Florida. So I know evacuation orders are coming out in spots from the Carolinas downward here, but I really think that this could be a big problem for these harbors if it holds that near Cat 5 status and can build those waves up like that and throw them into this shallow bowl of water. This is not good for storm surge issues, so that's something to watch. For our area, again, if it does move inland, that high builds in, it wants to go backwards. We would get some gusty winds here about Tuesday or Wednesday next week. It doesn't look to be as much rain as Harvey, maybe some decent rain out of that, so we'll monitor that. And real quick on Jose, hurricane, could be a Cat 2 or 3 later tonight. It will fall in behind Irma, but then, as I mentioned, that high builds in. So what happens is when that high builds in, it forces the remnants of Irma to do that backing ability in the Ohio Valley, but it will likely impact Jose as well, and it's going to turn it to the east, and there is a chance that it may run into another issue of a blocking issue to where it's going to get back into the easterly flow because the winds aloft are the easterlies, and it may get pulled back into the Caribbean. Jose could, and that'd be around the 17th of September. It's had happened before. Gene did that in 2004, in fact. It did that loop-de-loop. Let's hope it doesn't, because wouldn't that be horrible to have Irma brush by Florida and then cause all this chaos, and then a week later, Jose comes around and comes back in. I'm not trying to be gloom and doom, so I'm not even going to put that thought out there. Just leave it alone. That's it for today, guys. Enjoy the nice weather.